Hey guys, today I'm going to be reviewing a distro called TrueOS. TrueOS, formerly the PC-BSD project, is not a Linux distro. It is a BSD distribution. TrueOS is based on FreeBSD. TrueOS follows FreeBSD current with latest drivers, security updates, and packages available. It uses the open ZFS file system. I'm going to be installing TrueOS inside a virtual machine, inside VirtualBox in this case. So let's get started. Okay, so I've downloaded the ISO. I'm going to be installing this inside VirtualBox. And this is like the third or fourth time in the last 5 minutes I've started the install. For some reason, it wants to crash VirtualBox. So I've actually had to restart this video a few times. So there's something kind of buggy here. At least trying to install it inside VirtualBox. It may not like me trying to record this video while installing inside VirtualBox because it crashes whenever I capture the keyboard and mouse and then try to uncapture my keyboard and mouse, to pause the recording or start the recording again. So I may not record the install because I would have to pretty much record the whole install, which I'm not sure how long it would take, 20 minutes, maybe longer. I haven't installed TrueOS before, but I'm not going to record that whole install process because I would have to cut most of it down. I would have to cut a lot of video out. Either that or show the whole thing to you guys and you'd be bored to tears when I run the installer, so I'm going to end up not showing most of it. But initially, you see, it has this language screen. It selected English for me, which is correct. Then we have the choice of the TrueOS Desktop Edition or the TrueOS Server Edition. Obviously, we need the Desktop Edition, which has a graphical user interface, a GUI. If you choose the TrueOS Server, at the end of the install, all you've done is installed the server. All you're going to have at the end of that is a command prompt, so don't do that if you actually want a desktop. We have the choice of our drivers here. I need the latest NVIDIA drivers. I'm going to tick that on. I need the VirtualBox Guest Edition, so I'm going to tick that on. And then we have some disk settings. I guess it's some partitioning. I wonder, I'm going to customize disk settings. Let's see what that's about. I'm actually not sure what that is going to be. Basic, new to BSD, or disk partitioning, advanced. You know what? I'm just going to choose the basic. Let's see what the basic is. Okay, it is correctly determined I have a 15 gig hard drive inside this virtual machine. It has chosen use entire disk. Yeah, okay, that's fine. It's going to be a ZFS file system. Everything here looks good. I'm just going to go with it. Choose next. Start the customized disk installation. And this will probably be the only part of the install process I show you guys. The next time I start the video will be after I've installed TrueOS and have it loaded up. Again, I can't really pause and start the video inside this VirtualBox because for some reason it wants to crash the install process every time I do that. So I'll be back in a few minutes after the installation's done. Okay guys, I'm through with the installation. The install took, 10, maybe 15 minutes. It wasn't the quickest install, but it wasn't too bad. So I'm going to wait for the machine to boot back up and see what happens. Alright, so we have booted up and it's asking me about VirtualBox graphics again. VirtualBox wants to capture my keyboard and mouse. Alright, so video driver, VBox video has been chosen. Yeah, I'm guessing that's the right one. I'm going to go with it. I am inside VirtualBox after all. So, confirm resolution. Keep these settings. That is very small resolution. But you know what? I'm just going to go with it. I may be able to change that later on. We'll see. And it's back to me choosing drivers again. Let me try a different driver. How about NVIDIA? I don't think that's going to work. I think the VirtualBox driver was the one I needed. Yeah. So nothing happened when I choose NVIDIA, so it needs that one, the VirtualBox. But when I apply that, yeah, go ahead and keep that. Alright, so I'm out of that nightmare. So English is our language. Needs time zone. I'm in the central time zone, so I'm going to go America. Chicago is usually in these lists, and it's central time zone. So needs a host name, TrueOS-2497. Yeah, I guess that's okay. I'm just going to shorten it to TrueOS though. Domain name. This is not a web server, so I'm not sure why I need to give it a domain name. So root password, I'm going to give it a simple root password that I'll remember for this virtual machine. Create a user, TrueOS. It's my name, TrueOS. It's already chosen TrueOS for my username. I'm going to give the TrueOS user a password. Alright, it's asking about audio output. Let me test it. That works. Alright, optional services. Do I want any of this? I guess I could enable SSH. I do use SSH occasionally, but this is a virtual machine. I'm just going to leave it all ticked off. I'm just going to choose next. Okay, and now it says it's preparing to run the TrueOS setup wizard. Alright, I think that's it. I think we are inside my newly installed TrueOS. It looks like for desktop options we have the Lumina desktop environment or Fluxbox. That's the only two options. Lumina is the desktop of choice for TrueOS. It was created mainly for BSD. The Lumina desktop environment has the BSD license rather than the GPL license that every other like Linux desktop uses. GNOME, KDE, XFCE, they're all GPL. So the Lumina desktop was designed with BSD in mind. It is licensed with the BSD license. Now let me log into the Lumina desktop. I've never used the Lumina desktop environment. I know nothing about it. Alright, and the VirtualBox Guest Editions did work. It immediately went to full screen, the full screen resolution here. So I'm actually pretty excited about that. I did not expect it to do that. I thought I was going to have to deal with that very small screen resolution for this video, but that was a pleasant surprise. It looks like the Lumina desktop environment, again, I've never looked at it, I've never read anything about it, so this is a very initial first impression. We have these little almost like tiles here, and I'm guessing these are just links to apps. It looks like we have something called the App Cafe here in this corner. If I double click it, it looks like it is a software center of sorts, so that's good. So if I searched for, you know, something like, say I wanted to install the GNOME desktop environment, you know, I do have some GNOME stuff that comes up. So I could play around in the App Cafe if I wanted to search for, you know, different software I wanted to install. Now, being a Linux guy, a lot of the software I'm used to probably is not going to be available on BSD. So there's that to consider. Again, BSD too, you know, a lot of the desktop apps especially that I'm used to, a lot of those won't be available in BSD. BSD, I mean, let's be honest, it's mainly for servers. It's mainly for system administrators. Nobody really runs BSD as their daily desktop driver. It's just not designed to be a desktop operating system. But TrueOS is trying to change all that, and PC-BSD before TrueOS, you know, they were really trying to be the Ubuntu of the BSD world, if you will. They were trying to make BSD, you know, more palatable to the general public, similar to what Ubuntu did back in, you know, 2004 or whatever, when Ubuntu first sprang up, you know, and their logo was Linux for human beings, because everybody at the time back then thought Linux was just a server operating system, that real people didn't use Linux for anything. So I think that's what TrueOS is trying to do for BSD. Let's see how well they're doing. I'm going to go to this little menu here. I'm going to browse files, or not browse files, I'm going to browse the applications. Let's see what is installed on TrueOS by default. We have some Qt stuff for the Qt toolkit. This is for developers, so not much to see here. Photonic is their info viewer. I've never heard of Photonic before. I'm not sure if that's strictly a BSD program or not. Then we have the TrueOS PDF viewer for viewing PDFs, of course. VLC is the multimedia player. VLC, very familiar multimedia player. A lot of Linux distros use it by default. VLC is also available in Windows. VLC is awesome. Fantastic media player. We have Cupzilla, the web browser. We have Trojita, which is a email client. So that's kind of cool. But if you're going to install an email client, why wouldn't you install something like Thunderbird? You know, it's kind of strange that you install something like Trojita, which honestly I don't know anything about. We have our desktop configuration under settings, device manager. We have login manager settings, Lumina screen configuration, Lumina theme engine. Let's see what kind of themes we can get with Lumina here. Let's see, effects. Have some different menu effects we could do. Fonts, icons. There's really no icon themes other than the material design theme and the Adwaita theme, which is I think the default GNOME icon theme. There's really not much to play around with as far as themes and icons and different styles here. But again, you know, it's BSD. It's not Linux. We have options for mouse, screensaver. We have our system update manager here, which I'm not sure if I actually need to update the system after that install. I downloaded one of the daily snapshots, so this is not an old ISO by any means. So there should, if it does need to be updated, it should just be a few things. I'm not going to bother running an update though on this video. We have our task manager, user config. We have some screensaver stuff. Have desktop information, manage printing. We have the Qt terminal. So I guess this is the terminal of choice here in TrueOS. You know what? I've noticed that the window manager has crashed here. There is no decorations at the top of this window. There's no close button. So already we're starting to see a few bugs here. Alright, back to browse applications. We have the Qt terminal drop down. I'm guessing this is a drop down terminal, yeah. So that's kind of cool. Close that out. Browse applications. We have calculator. We have Compton, which is I guess the compositor they're using. I use Compton a lot on OpenBox and Fluxbox, and sometimes on tiling window managers. It's a great minimal but fully functional compositor. We have the control panel. Let's take a look at the control panel. The control panel is called SysADM. I'm guessing that's for sysadmin. And it launches the App Cafe or the Update Manager with these links here. We have options to manage our SSL keys. Under System Management, we have our boot environments, devices, firewall, mouse settings, services, system controls, tasks, users. Under Utilities, we have Life Preserver. Alright, we have the Insight File Manager. So that's a new one to me. I've never heard of Insight. Probably BSD only, or it's probably specific to the Lumina desktop environment. But it looks like any other file manager that you've probably ever played around with. Basically, it looks exactly how a file manager should look. So we have the Lumina archiver, which I'm assuming is for archive files, zip, unzip, that kind of thing. Lumina file information, Lumina media player. Let's take a look at that. Oh, it plays Pandora radio. That's kind of cool. So I actually like that. That's really pretty neat. The Lumina PDF viewer again, Lumina screenshot, Lumina search, Lumina text editor. Let's check out the text editor. I always like to look at the terminal and the text editor in these videos because they're kind of important programs. Looks like your basic text editor. Network manager, sysadmin client, TrueOS, mixer tray. Yeah, and that's pretty much it for the default applications that are installed. Now, there's really not much to the Lumina desktop environment. I mean, it's very, very basic. You have the taskbar at the bottom, very traditional, almost Windows 95-ish kind of desktop. You have the taskbar at the bottom. You have your little start menu, if you will, here. Your applications are listed in it. And then you have some stuff on the desktop, links to programs. Not much else to it. It's actually not a very attractive desktop environment, if I'm being honest. I probably wouldn't run this. The window manager, the theming and everything, I mean, it looks dated. For a modern operating system, a modern desktop, modern programs, this looks, honestly, it looks pretty bad. I would be ashamed to show this to a new user, somebody that's never seen Linux or BSD, somebody coming from Windows or Mac. Hey, look at this desktop environment. They would probably look at this and be like, why the hell are you guys running something like that? So just briefly, I'm going to go back to the login manager here, and I'm going to choose Fluxbox. I just want to see if the Fluxbox desktop or window manager here in this case looks any better than that Lumina desktop did. It actually looks pretty standard for Fluxbox. Now the screen resolution I noticed in Fluxbox doesn't go full screen. I guess the VirtualBox guest editions are not working inside the VirtualBox desktop here. But I will admit, having used Fluxbox in the past, Fluxbox, I would actually prefer living in this than that Lumina desktop that I had just saw. I will say the Fluxbox window manager does not launch Xterm when I click Xterm. Let me see if it launches any of these other apps. When I choose App Cafe, nothing launches. So this is unfortunate because I would probably, if I use this, I would probably use Fluxbox or maybe OpenBox. Maybe I'd install OpenBox if I could get that working on TrueOS. But I mean, it says it has the browser W3M installed. At least it's in the Fluxbox menu. It probably isn't installed. Nothing launches. I mean, does Xcalc launch? No. So it looks like pretty much everything in this Fluxbox menu, nothing's going to launch. Let's see, VI. Come on. Please. Show me some VI. How about Nano? So the Fluxbox desktop here is a complete fail. So I'm going to log back into the Lumina desktop environment since Fluxbox was not working at all. At least the Lumina desktop environment, the VirtualBox guest editions work, and I get a full screen resolution. But man, this is a hideous looking desktop environment. I mean, it is what it is though. Now, why would you use something like BSD over Linux for a desktop operating system? Well, let's be honest, you wouldn't. Again, BSD it's a server operating system. If you're happily running Linux on your desktop, have for years, I mean, there's nothing wrong with trying out something like TrueOS or OpenBSD or FreeBSD or Dragonfly or any of those BSDs. But don't expect it to be Linux. Linux is far more mature of a desktop operating system than BSD is. A lot better driver support, a lot more options as far as software. If you were somebody that was running BSD every day, in a server environment, then running something like TrueOS on your desktop or laptop makes a lot of sense. But if you're not in that kind of role, managing a lot of BSD servers, running TrueOS on your desktop is probably a task that you really don't want to undertake. I mentioned something about the Lumina desktop earlier, that it is BSD licensed rather than GPL. That's the reason they created this Lumina desktop environment. That is probably one of the biggest selling points that the BSD guys anyway point to, is the BSD license, how superior it is in some cases to the GPL license, the GNU public license. Mainly because the BSD license is so short. I think it's only 2 or 3 sentences, and it basically lets the user do whatever the hell they want to do with the source code. So the GPL license is restrictive in some ways. If you modify, code that is licensed under the GPL, basically you have to release the source code for your modifications. The BSD license doesn't include any sort of restrictions on something like that. You're free to modify the code in any way. You're free to keep that code that you modify closed if you choose to do so. But anyway, this was a first look impression of TrueOS. I ran PC-BSD in a virtual machine 4 or 5 years ago, and it wasn't my thing back then. Honestly, I expected it to be a lot better, 5 years down the road than what I experienced then. Because, man, this is one ugly desktop. I know I can probably get something like GNOME or KDE installed, but TrueOS, if this is your flagship desktop environment, the Lumina desktop environment, you could put something better else out there as your flagship desktop environment. And then you have, I guess, as a backup desktop environment, if you will, the Fluxbox window manager, which I love Fluxbox, but it is broken. The menu, every single link in the Fluxbox menu, you click it, nothing happens. So, guys, really, I'm going to give TrueOS kind of a fail on this. I'm not impressed at all. Peace, guys.